The question came during dessert. We were at an upscale restaurant in downtown Seattle, the kind with cloth napkins and waiters who refill your water before you notice it's empty. Our CEO, Margaret Chin, sat at the head of the table, her wine glass catching the candlelight. She turned to me with a warm smile and asked, "Daniel, did that performance bonus help with your son's expenses?" I froze with my fork halfway to my mouth. The table went quiet. I could feel everyone's eyes on me. My heart started pounding in my chest. I set down the fork carefully and looked directly at her. "What bonus?" I said. The words hung in the air like smoke. Margaret's smile faded. Her eyes moved slowly from my face to someone else at the table. My boss, Rick Patterson, sat 3 seats down. His face had gone completely white. "Let me back up 6 months. My name is Daniel Torres. I'm 35 years old and I work in supply chain operations for a mid-sized tech company called Northway Electronics. I'm not anyone important. No fancy title, no corner office. I fix problems behind the scenes that keep products moving from factories to customers. I'm good at my job because I care about details and I don't cut corners. I have a 10-year-old son named Leo. His mother left when he was 3, so it's just the 2 of us. Every night before bed, no matter where I am, he sends me the same message, a soccer emoji, a moon emoji, and "Good night, Dad." That message is everything to me. It reminds me why I work 60-hour weeks and swallow my pride when Rick treats me like I'm disposable. Rick became my direct supervisor 18 months ago. He transferred from the finance department with big promises about modernizing operations and cutting costs. What he actually did was take credit for other people's work and throw them under the bus when things went wrong. I watched him do it to 3 colleagues before I understood the pattern. He was building his reputation on our backs. I kept my head down and focused on Leo. My son needed braces that cost $4,000. Our rent had just increased by $200 a month. I couldn't afford to lose this job, so I became invisible. I said yes when Rick asked for weekend work. I stayed quiet when he presented my solutions as his own ideas. I told myself it didn't matter as long as the paychecks kept coming. In February, everything changed. Our largest supplier in the Philippines, a factory called Apex Manufacturing, threatened to terminate their contract with us. They supplied 60% of our component parts. Losing them would shut down our entire production line. Rick called me into his office on a Monday morning. He didn't look up from his computer when I walked in. "You're going to Manila?" he said flatly. "The factory owner is pissed about something. Fix it before we lose the contract." I asked what had caused the problem. Rick waved his hand dismissively. "Does it matter? Just smooth things over and get them back on track. You leave Friday." That was it. No briefing, no background information, no support. Just a plane ticket and an order to fix someone else's mess. I arrived in Manila on a Saturday afternoon. The heat hit me like opening an oven door. I took a taxi to a modest hotel near the factory district and spent the weekend preparing. I reviewed every email exchange between Northway and Apex for the past year. What I found made my stomach turn. Rick had been changing agreed-upon payment schedules without warning. He'd been demanding faster production times than physically possible. He'd been threatening to find cheaper suppliers in every other message. No wonder they wanted out. On Monday morning, I met the factory owner, Marcos Santos. He was a short man in his 50s with gray hair and tired eyes. He shook my hand firmly, but his expression was guarded. "Come," he said. "I will show you why we are done with Northway." Marcos walked me through his factory floor. It was clean and well organized. Workers operated machinery with practiced efficiency. He introduced me to several employees by name, asking about their families, remembering details about their lives. This wasn't just a business to him. These were people he cared about. We ended up in his office, a simple room with a desk, 2 chairs, and a photo of his own family on the wall. He pulled out a folder of printed emails. "Read these," he said. "Then tell me why we should continue." I read every single one. Rick's messages were condescending, aggressive, and disrespectful. He treated Marcos like a servant rather than a partner. I felt embarrassed to work for the same company. When I finished, I looked up at Marcos. "You're right," I said. "This is unacceptable." Marcos blinked. He clearly hadn't expected agreement. "You understand?" he asked cautiously. I nodded. "Nobody should be treated this way. You run a quality operation here. You employ hundreds of people. You deserve respect and fair terms." Something shifted in his expression. The guardedness softened slightly. "Your colleague, Mr. Patterson, does not see it this way," Marcos said carefully. I took a deep breath. Rick doesn't see people. He sees numbers and leverage points. But I'm not Rick. Marcos studied my face for a long moment. Then he leaned back in his chair. Okay, he said. I will give you 3 weeks. Show me that Northway can be different. If you cannot, we sign with the other company that has been courting us. 3 weeks to save an $18 million contract. No pressure at all. I stayed in Manila for those 3 weeks. Every morning I went to the factory. I didn't sit in Marcos's office making demands. I walked the floor. I talked to workers. I learned their names and asked about their work. I discovered problems Rick had never bothered to understand. Payment delays weren't because Marcos was difficult. They were because our accounting department required documentation that didn't match Philippine business standards. Production delays weren't because the factory was inefficient. They were because Rick kept changing specifications after production had already started. I spent hours on calls with our home office, fixing processes and explaining reality. I reworked timelines to be actually achievable. I restructured payment terms to be fair to both sides. Slowly, trust started building. By the end of week 2, Marcos invited me to dinner with his family. During that dinner, Marcos asked about my life. I told him about Leo. About the braces and soccer practices and bedtime messages. He smiled warmly. You are a good father, he said. This I can see. His wife asked if I missed my son. I admitted I did every single day. Their teenage daughter asked if I liked my job. I hesitated. That hesitation told them everything. Marcos's expression turned serious. Daniel, he said quietly, you should work for people who value you. I didn't know what to say to that. At the end of week 3 we had a new agreement drafted. $18 million over 2 years. Fair terms for both sides. Respect built into every clause. Marcos read through it carefully. Then he looked at me. We will sign this, he said. But only if you remain the point of contact. I flew back to Seattle on a Thursday night. I was exhausted but proud. I'd saved the company millions and built a real partnership with our most important supplier. Friday morning, I went straight to Rick's office to brief him. He was on his phone when I knocked. He gestured impatiently for me to sit and wait. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. He finally ended his call and looked at me like I was interrupting his day. Well, he said. I walked him through everything. The problems I'd found, the solutions I'd implemented, the new contract terms. He listened with a blank expression. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. Great, he said. Send me the documents. I'll present this to Margaret next week. No thank you. No acknowledgement of the work. Just an immediate plan to take credit. The following Tuesday, Rick presented my work to the leadership team. I know because I heard about it from Sarah in accounting. She pulled me aside in the break room. Rick's presentation was impressive, she said. He really saved that Philippine contract. I felt my jaw tighten but I just nodded. That afternoon, an email went out from Margaret Chin praising Rick for his exceptional work in securing our supply chain. My name wasn't mentioned once. I went home that night and sat on my couch, staring at nothing. Leo came in and curled up next to me. Bad day, Dad? He asked. I pulled him close. Just tired, buddy? He sent me his usual message before bed even though I was right there in the apartment. Soccer emoji, moon emoji, good night. Some things stay constant even when everything else feels wrong. 3 months passed. I went back to my regular routine, fixing problems and staying invisible. Rick got promoted to Senior Operations Director in May. There was a small celebration in the conference room with cake and sparkling cider. Margaret made a speech about his outstanding contributions to the company. She specifically mentioned the Philippine contract as evidence of his strategic thinking and relationship-building skills. Rick smiled and accepted congratulations from everyone. He caught my eye across the room for just a moment. His expression was smug, almost mocking. He knew exactly what he'd done. I excused myself and went back to my desk. That evening, I got a call from Marcos. Daniel, he said warmly, I wanted to check on you. We have not spoken in some time. We talked for an hour. He asked about Leo, about work, about life. I kept things positive, but he heard something in my voice. You are not happy, Marcos said. It wasn't a question. I sighed. It doesn't matter. I have responsibilities. Marcos was quiet for a moment. You know, he said carefully, another company contacted me last month. They are expanding operations in Asia and need someone to lead their supplier relationships. Someone who understands both business and people. My heart skipped. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because they asked if I knew anyone, Marcos said. I did not mention your name. It is not my place. But Daniel, if you were interested, I could make an introduction. I thanked him and said I'd think about it. But I didn't think about it. I couldn't afford to think about it. Leo needed stability. I needed steady income. Dreams were expensive and I'd run out of budget for them years ago. I pushed the conversation out of my mind and focused on work. In late June, Margaret announced a company dinner for top performers. 20 people were invited, including Rick and, surprisingly, me. The invitation came via email with a note: "Your contributions have not gone unnoticed." I was confused but pleased. Maybe someone had finally seen my actual work. The dinner was scheduled for the first Friday in July at an expensive restaurant downtown. I bought a new shirt for the occasion. Leo was excited when I told him. "Are you getting an award, Dad?" he asked. I laughed. "I don't think so. Just a nice dinner." The night of the dinner, I arrived exactly on time. The restaurant was beautiful, all dark wood and soft lighting. Margaret greeted everyone personally at the door. When she shook my hand, she smiled warmly. "Daniel, I'm so glad you could make it." I felt valued for the first time in months. We sat at a long table. Margaret at the head, Rick 3 seats to her right, me 2 seats to her left. The meal was incredible. Multiple courses, each more impressive than the last. Conversation flowed easily. People shared stories about projects and challenges. Laughter filled the air. For a while, I forgot about all the frustration and disappointment. I felt like part of a team. Then came dessert. Chocolate cake with raspberry sauce. Margaret was talking about work-life balance and how the company wanted to support employees' personal challenges. She mentioned that several people had received performance bonuses specifically to help with family needs. Then she turned to me. "Daniel, did that performance bonus help with your son's expenses?" The restaurant noise faded. My fork was halfway to my mouth. Every eye at the table turned toward me. I set down my fork slowly. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "What bonus?" I said. My voice came out steady, which surprised me. Margaret's smile froze. Confusion crossed her face. "The performance bonus," she said. "From the Philippine contract. Rick submitted your name for a special recognition award. $5,000. The blood drained from my head. I'd never received $5,000. I'd never received anything. No email, no notification, no deposit. Nothing. My eyes moved from Margaret to Rick. He'd gone completely white. His mouth opened but no sound came out. "I never received a bonus," I said clearly. "I didn't even know one was awarded." The table went absolutely silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the carpet 3 rooms away. Margaret's expression shifted from confusion to something harder. "Rick," Margaret said quietly. Her voice could have frozen water. "Is this true?" Rick's face was now red instead of white. Splotches of color appeared on his neck. "There must be a mistake," he stammered. "A processing error in payroll or something. I definitely submitted the paperwork." Margaret pulled out her phone. Her fingers moved rapidly across the screen. "I'm looking at the approval email right now. Dated April 15th. $5,000 for Daniel Torres. I personally signed off on it." She looked up. "Rick, you were responsible for processing it." Rick's mouth opened and closed. He looked like a fish drowning in air. Other people at the table started whispering to each other. Sarah from accounting had a strange expression on her face, like she was putting pieces together. "I'll look into it immediately," Rick said desperately. "First thing Monday morning. There has to be an explanation." Margaret set down her phone very deliberately. "No," she said. "We'll look into it now." "Excuse me." She stood and walked toward the restaurant's entrance, her phone already at her ear. The table remained silent. Rick wouldn't look at anyone. He stared at his plate like it might offer him an escape route. I sat very still, trying to process what had just happened. 10 minutes later, Margaret returned. Her expression was ice. She didn't sit down. "Rick, I need you to come with me. Now." It wasn't a request. Rick stood on shaky legs. They walked out of the restaurant together. Through the window, I could see them standing on the sidewalk. Margaret was talking. Rick was trying to respond. She cut him off repeatedly. The dinner continued awkwardly without them. People tried to resume conversations, but the energy was gone. 20 minutes later, Margaret came back alone. Rick didn't return. Margaret sat down and looked directly at me. "Daniel, I owe you an enormous apology. This will be handled." I nodded, not trusting my voice. The dinner wrapped up shortly after. People left in small groups, talking quietly. Margaret asked me to stay for a moment. When everyone else had gone, she sat across from me. "What happened tonight is unacceptable," she said. "Rick has been suspended pending a full investigation. I've already spoken with HR and our financial team. You'll receive your bonus with interest by Monday. But more importantly, I want to understand what's really been going on. So I told her. Everything. The Philippine trip, the credit taking, the pattern of behavior. She listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with each detail. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Why didn't you say something?" she asked. I shrugged. "I need this job. I have a son." Margaret's expression softened. "I understand," she said. "But you deserve better than silence. We all do." She paused. "I'm going to be honest with you, Daniel. This investigation will take time. But based on what I've learned tonight, Rick's future with this company is very much in question. Yours, however, just got brighter." The bonus appeared in my account Monday morning. $5,000 plus 6 months of interest. Tuesday, HR called me in for a conversation about career development. Thursday, I got an email offering me Rick's old position before his promotion. A real title. A 30% raise. Actual authority. I accepted. 3 weeks later, Rick was quietly let go. No announcement, no goodbye email. Just gone. Last month, Marcos called. "I heard news," he said. "Congratulations, my friend." Leo asked me about it one night. "Dad, were you scared when the CEO asked that question?" I nodded. "So why did you tell the truth?" he asked. I thought for a moment. "Because sometimes," I said, "the moment you speak up is the moment everything changes." He smiled. "That sounds like a superhero line." Maybe it is. Sometimes the worst moment becomes the best turning point. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is simply tell the truth and let it work.